What's up, guys? Sub-Zerek here, and it's, at that time, we're getting close to the end of the set. We got Worlds this weekend, and then boom, we're done with this set, on to the next one. Every single set, Riot Games posts one of these dev learnings articles that's written by Mortdog and some of the other developers that talks about what they feel like they learned from the set, and also gives some hints as far as what's coming in the next set. It's a really, really nice, and like this is a meaty article for us to talk through here. And I just want to go over a lot of the stuff they talked about, a lot of the hints for next set that I'm really, really hyped for, and also, just talk about my thoughts on the set in general and that kind of stuff. I do have a Robin Songs VOD for you guys just to play in the background while I talk through everything, because I know that you guys your brains have been destroyed by TikTok, and so you can't like watch a video of just a guy talking, though. Somehow you also watched a 4-hour video essay on a Star Wars hotel, but I mean, either way, it's fine. Okay, so the first thing that they talk about in this article, and I'm just gonna go through the article piece by piece, briefly summarize what they're talking about, and then talk about my thoughts on that kind of stuff. The first thing they talk about is just set theming, magic, and mayhem. This isn't really my area of expertise nor area of stuff that I really care about that much. It's nice when a set is pretty, and I think that's really it does actually matter a bit. People really loved like set 10 and the music and stuff like that. The feel of the set is really, really important, but at the same time, I would absolutely take an ugly set that is the best set, most fun to play set of all time, compared to a really, really pretty visual set that absolutely sucked to play. So I would say, as far as what they say about this, it's a fun theme. They did some kind of like cute stuff this set, and they said maybe they went a little bit too far in the cutesy, where you have Sugarcraft and Honeymancer and all these little things. But there weren't too many like edgy traits, and I know some League players. I know there are people who like to play like the edgy traits and that kind of stuff. So I guess I could see that sort of critique from the players, or something like that. That there's not enough edginess this set. Like I said, this isn't something that I care about too much. The big, well, medium reveal that they say in this article is that with Into the Arcane, we're leaning heavily into authentically representing Arcane while remaining true to TFT's core, while where Gizmos and Gadgets was a more casual homage to Piltover and Zon, Into the Arcane will take things directly from the show in both theme and gameplay. What does that mean? I don't completely know. Will there be a trait based on some kind of plot point in the show or something like that, like really, really tailored to what actually happens in the plot? I don't know. They have revealed that they are going to have a decent amount of champions that aren't, or units that aren't champions in TFT. They had a kind of like a visual, and I believe they've confirmed that they will have Savika in the set, who, like, honestly, I don't even really remember from Arcane. Was she the lady that fought Vi? Or I don't remember. It was a while since I've watched Arcane. And they've also confirmed 100% that they will have Powder in the next set. So I'm a Powder reroll 1 trick. She's got to be like a 1 cost, right? Because she's like young, or she can be like a 5 cost because, well, I don't know. We'll see. I'm so hyped for it, but I'm hyped for Arcane theming. And it should be interesting to see like traits that are really not just kind of like these generic traits. Oh, look at the kitty. What's the name of that cat? It starts with an L, right? Something like that. Leon? Something like that. But yeah, I'm hyped, and I think it'll be interesting to have theming like that. But once again, I don't know. I don't care too much about this stuff. All right, point number 2 that they talk about here is charms. Mostly they say that they were a good addition to the game. Their bolded point here is charms were a great addition to the game, but that doesn't mean they should stick around. On that point, I would agree. I actually really, really like charms. I think they're by far the best set mechanic since augments, which we know was such a good set mechanic that it's been in every single TFT set going forward. The moment that I saw charms, I was so high on them. When I played them in the playtest, I said, this is so cool because there's so much decision making within charms. Deciding if you want to roll for another charm, deciding if you want to spend that gold to pick up that charm, deciding how you want to use the charm, like all these little optimizations later in the set that we saw where it's like, oh, you can bench these units and like tailor this charm. So many little optimizations you can make, and I love that about TFT. I think that is where TFT is at its best, when you are making all these tiny little optimizations to play the best that you can and have much more avenues for decisions. Charms were in many ways the exact opposite of encounters. Encounters, they just happen to you. You know, you would get to 3-2 and there would be an encounter and it would say, you know, like you get some gold or something like that, or you know, you get the Kha'Zix encounter, which makes it so that you get extra, like you can spend more gold on XP if you want to, but you can't plan exactly for that because there's too many encounters to plan for it. But also, like, you can just get absolutely screwed over if, you know, you get an encounter where you get like 2 blue duplicators and then the people playing reroll just get their 3 stars for free. It was really, encounters was one of my least favorite mechanics for that reason, that it really took player agency out of the hands of the players, and I feel like they really knocked the ball out of the park with charms. And my hope is that because players enjoyed, in my opinion, players enjoyed, once again, you know, these videos are kind of a dialogue. This is my thoughts, but I also love to hear what you guys think about all this kind of stuff. Because it seemed like players really enjoyed charms, I really hope they continue to go in this direction where they have set mechanics that add player agency to the game. The nice thing about charms as well is they're pretty simple. A lot of people were kind of afraid that there would be kind of like it would be too overwhelming to see like, oh, there's this charm, there's this charm. But I do think it's actually like pretty easy to read a charm and say, do I want this or do I not want this? It's pretty easy to do that. It's a bit harder during rollouts and stuff like that, and that's one of the reasons why probably they can't keep charms forever. It's just because it's too much to stay in the game forever. But I do think charms were a really good addition, and I'm really happy with everywhere that charms were. And like, honestly, you know, the only thing stopping me from saying that charms should exist forever and that we should have charms every set is just because it's too much, right? There's no way we're gonna have charms and then a set mechanic and then other stuff, you know, augments, of course, and you know, all this kind of stuff on top. But you know, if augments didn't exist, I could see charms being like evergreen or something like that. So that is to be said. I think they said the only kind of miss with charms is that the balance on them was rough at points. Desperate Plea, I've told this so many times. I loaded in to my first playtest game. I saw that Desperate Plea was in the game, and I said, "Oh, I mean, they're doing this for the playtest. This will be out of the game, but before we get to PBE, I think like people are going to complain about this in playtest. They're going to remove this, and it's not going to exist by the time we get to PBE. And a lot of people complained about it, and it made it to PBE, and I was like, wow, I can't believe Desperate Plea made it to PBE. But okay, it made it to PBE. There's no way it's going to make it to live because enough people are going to complain about it during PBE, and it's just a fundamentally bad idea to have that charm in the game. I don't understand the thinking behind it whatsoever. And then it made it to live, and then we had it for a little while in live, and people were like, "This really sucks." And Riot was like, "I got you. We're gonna remove it." What happened first? Did they rework it first, or did they remove it? I believe what happened first is they removed it, and they said, "But it's coming back." And the next patch, they brought Desperate Plea back with a slight rework that changed a little bit and didn't make it as egregious, but was still just completely unhealthy for the game. And then they finally said, okay, you're right, we'll remove it. That was insane. I don't know why that happened. Things like the dragon as well was complained about a lot on PBE, was complained about a lot in playtest. So, you know, a lot of moving parts. Obviously, they have to balance all the units, all the augments, all the traits, all this kind of stuff. So it's hard to do it all and add charms on top of that. And overall, I think I was not offended by the balance of charms this set. A few egregious ones, but really, I think they did a pretty good job. And obviously, you know, we want to live in a world where there's perfect balance, but we're never going to live in that world. So I'm not that offended with charm balance overall. Like I said, I loved charms. All right, next part of what they talk about is the 14.18, the huge patch. They call it a quarter set, which is funny. Now, Mortdog did say, and they don't talk about it all in this article, but they make no promise that every set will have a quarter set, you know, where there'll be like a big patch. Their idea is just kind of, they want to be able to push these changes when they feel like it's necessary, when they think, okay, we can do better by, you know, adding these changes to the game. And I think that's perfect. I think it makes perfect sense to say, okay, if we have some big changes we want to make, like something like the 3-star animation change where you can just 3-star unit instantly, they shouldn't have to wait for like a mid set for a quality of life upgrade like that. Or even like the pan, adding the pan to the game, I think Take it or leave it. I don't really care that much about Pam being in the game. It adds more emblems that you can craft. I do like that they removed Tome of Traits because Tome of Traits was just a really, really annoying little kind of like mini game have to where you like min max stuff. So I'm happy that they got rid of Tome of Traits and like Pan, adds more craftable stuff to the game. So I don't, have an issue with that. They do talk about some of the reworks being kind of difficult. Where they reworked like Hecarim a little bit, they reworked Gwen, they reworked Wukong, a lot of these units, and some of those reworks fell a little bit flat. Wukong, his itemization change. Gwen was kind of a really weird one where like for the first patch she was horrible, right? She did no damage, and they said, you know what, yeah, that's a miss. We're going to kind of like rework her AI again. I don't know. It definitely caused some amount of mess. And so I would just say that I wouldn't want to see it become the norm that we're reworking these champions midway through the set, just because I do feel like in general it's kind of awkward to have to you know uh, I think they should just sort of like think further ahead and say, you know what, if we have a champion that by the time we got to the middle of the set, we realized that its ability is just kind of like fundamentally flawed and like the design is fundamentally flawed. The hope would be that they could catch those things before we get to the middle of the set, right? Catch those things in the play testing and stuff like that, so that, we don't have to get to the middle of the set and rework them. But obviously, once again, that's much easier said than done, and I understand why they have to do that sometimes, and I think it's okay sometimes. So I'm not that offended by the middle of the set patch. I do think it made balance kind of difficult. The fairy rework as well, right? Moving fairy to this 3-5-7 structure, which then was kind of problematic for the rest of the entire set. I think, if we had started at 3-5-7 fairy, we would have got to a much more balanced state a lot faster and wouldn't have to deal with like patches where fairy was broken, which, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, we can kind of talk about this in another section, I think, or maybe this is the best section. No, okay, well, we'll talk about it in the next section, which is on balance. But I do think, balance was probably the worst part of this set. And so, okay, we'll talk about it in the next part where they talk about the release patch and Syndra being broken. They essentially say that Syndra was really, really broken on the release patch because they tried to change her because in one part, people discovered this new Syndra build on PB. Not a lot of people were doing this, like Gwinsu's red buff, building a lot of attack speed on Syndra, setup that people did end up building a lot of after PBE, and that caught them off guard. And they'd also changed Syndra with a B patch right at the start of the set, so then they couldn't change her. That's a limitation on just on just TFT patching. They cannot, if they B patch a unit, they can't like re-B patch them, which is an issue, and it's just a limitation that lives in TFT. I think one of the things that they talk about is they probably shouldn't have immediately B-patched Syndra. What they should have done is just let her exist for a few, for a few days, and then even if they knew she needed to be B-patched, then they could have gone, further in one direction. They also talked about potentially nerfing other pieces of the Syndra comp. I don't know if that's actually the best way to go about it because, for example, Shapeshifter Syndra dominated early on, right? Imagine if really, really quickly they said, okay, we're just going to nerf all the Shapeshifters because we can't nerf Syndra because of limitations, so we're just going to nerf a bunch of the Shapeshifters. They do that, and then the Vanguard Syndra version comes out, and then it's just like as even more broken because there's not other stuff to keep it in check. I do think that would be a mistake. So I do think probably just a little bit, because they know that they cannot, do that double patch setup. I do think they should just be a little bit more careful when they go for something like a B patch, which I think they know. I think they understand that, which is reasonable. One of the things they don't talk about in this article, though, because they talk all about the issue balancing Syndra, but one of the things they don't talk about is fairy being incredibly broken for multiple patches, and the big thing that's completely missing from this article that I think Mortdog's been thinking about a lot, and I actually have a little like Reddit comment that he wrote where he addressed this, is just the move towards sort of like flowchart TFT and the death of flex in TFT. This has been talked to death by a lot of TFT players. The idea is just that very often at 2-1, and by no later than 3-1, you will know what comp you are playing 100%. And you will go level 8 if you're doing a level 8 comp, and you will roll down for a specific board. You will put into your team planner 8 units, and you will roll for that board, and that is the most optimal way to play TFT, with a few caveats. Maybe you can play around like Warrior Flex was on earlier patches. You could go like Rise as your Warrior backline carry, or you could go like Karma as your Warrior backline carry. That was very cool. But it was very, very unlikely. The best example of this is 5 Fairy. when you were rolling down and playing 5 Fairy Callista, give you the option of taking a Taric 2 or a Rakan 1, you would take that Rakan 1 7 days of the week. That is not, in my opinion, good for the game. I do think a big part of skill expression in TFT is knowing what units you can play on your board and when. And, you know, being able to play around different options, you know, not just saying, I'm going to put these 8 units into my team planner, I'm only going to roll down for these. Saying, okay, you know what, on my roll down, I was rolling for, you know, this Callista comp, but then I randomly hit like a Nasus too. Okay, maybe I can fit like Nasus on my board and then fit like a Kali and then use that for multi-striker with Callista and like build out this board, you know, in real time based on the units I hit. I think the most impressive TFT is when you see players doing that kind of like, okay, I hit this unit, I'm going to slowly build up my board based upon what I hit. And then they get to a really, really cool, interesting board where they add these units that, you know, if you want to bridge the gap between Nasus and Callista, you have a Kali, and then you get like a shapeshifter in there, and, you know, you figure out how that fits in and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, sometimes it's not even correct to play the Akali, because sometimes, you know, the unit that you could play over the Akali, you know, Pyro's fine, but maybe you don't actually need Pyro on your board. So then you have to, in real time, evaluate all the traits that are going on and say, okay, like what traits actually matter in this spot? Like what matters? You know, maybe I take out that Akali and play something different because I know that like you know, Pyro is not that important, but I have to evaluate then. The problem with, you know, this kind of like flowchart, very cookie cutter TFT is when it becomes optimal to do that, it allows people to just turn off their brains, and I don't think that should be the optimal way of playing TFT. I think you should be able to do that. I think you should be able to roll down every, you know, and just put 8 units into your team planner and be able to put together a decent board. I think that's, you know, perfectly fine. But what I would say is that should never be the optimal way of playing TFT. You know, you should never just roll down for an exact board, and you know, if you miss on your units, you should say, you know what, I should have played this a lot more flexibly. What I should have done is, you know, look at this. And my roll down, I rolled past a Taric too. I could have played that over a Khan. Like, what was I doing? Those are the kind of realizations that I love to make when I play TFT. I'm like, like I could have affected my game so much better if I had played more flexibly, if I had played better. But instead, what ends up happening in a lot of those circumstances is you say, I mean, I missed my Rakan. There was nothing I could do. I mean, Taric 2 was worse than Rakan 1, so why would I play the Taric 2? That just feels really, really, really bad. And so I hope that they get away from you know, this kind of balancing. And I will go over to this little Reddit post that Mortdog made to respond to somebody, which addresses some of this kind of stuff. This player says, the fact that they seem to consider Syndra the biggest issue of the set is worrying when it was by far how conditional every single line was, and the mid-set patch only removed more flexibly lines to Fairy Callista. No mention of how disgustingly reliant many traits were on emblems, which is something I didn't talk about either, but that's another thing that contributes to this, and is also just another factor where like a lot of comps were gated behind emblem. You couldn't play vertical Pyro unless you had a Pyro emblem. It was hard to play vertical Scholar without a Scholar emblem, these kind of things. And Mort actually says, for what it's worth, I agree this is a hot topic. He says, he doesn't say he agrees necessarily, but he agrees it's a hot topic. It was a bit too complex to put in the article, though. It's extremely top of mind for me. There's a clear push-pull around the concept of flex with powerful verticals, and the line between them is razor thin. With balance not being great this set, it was made even more clear with things like 5 Frost, 5 Multi, all being unplayable when removed, which removed even more of the flexibility. And so I think it's encouraging that Mort sees that this is, and also Robin is dead. So I'm just going to pull up his stream at this point, honestly, and just play this for the rest of the video because I know he's live right now. Yeah, you guys can watch some live Robin songs because I have more to say. So it's encouraging that Mort sees that this is an issue, and I'm very pleased that, you know, he sees the community's feedback on this and knows that, you know, like that it's an issue that people have. There was a tweet, I don't know if I can go pull it up in time, but, you know, it was a tweet where somebody said something very similar about how, you know, flex TFT, you know, feels almost at its worst this set. You know, there was very little flex TFT that was available to be played this set, and Mort essentially said that, you know, it's something that they're taking a look at. And that's the response I want to hear from Mort. I obviously he can't promise 100% we're going to, next set's going to be the most flexible set of all time, but what I want is for them to feel that this is an issue, and it certainly seems like this is something that's on their radar. That's what I want, for this to be something that's on their radar. The worst thing for me would for Mort to say, players like verticals, so we're gonna keep going into those verticals and make sure that you can only play these cookie cutter comps. That would be horrible for me. And I know people enjoy that. Like I said, I think that way of playing should be available. It just should not be optimal whatsoever. I think the optimal way you should play TFT is to be playing around what you're hitting and to keep all of these different comps and ideas in mind. And it seems hopefully like that's something that the dev team understands and that they are going to look for. So we'll see next set. I do feel like it's interesting. Every end of year set, they do put a lot of work into balance. This is also something that is affected by balance. 5 fairy was so broken that there was no alternative. Another something that happened last set 11 for everyone who played it. If anyone remembers the 4 Warden for Sniper, it was called comp, right? With Ashe and like a Mumu and stuff like that. That comp was a really, really egregious example where 4 Warden was the strongest frontline by far because 4 Warden was just really, really overtuned, and 4 Sniper was also really, really overtuned. That was a balancing issue. They just made those traits too strong when they buffed them up because they didn't see enough people playing them. But it should never have been the case that 4 Warden was always better, even if you hit like a 2-star of another tank, that you weren't going to play it because you wanted to play 4 Warden because it was just so broken. That's insane. I didn't talk about it too much, but I do also agree that it does really, really hurt that a lot of these comps feel gated behind emblems. It's really, really tragic to me that a lot of the forecasts this patch right now on our current patch of TFT, that it feels really, really hard. Here, I'll just pull up something called like TFT Academy because I think this is actually like a really good example. If you look at all the lines, Scholar Rise, you want the Scholar +1. Fairy Callista, you don't actually really need the Fairy +1, but they show the +1s for these. But things like Frost, you really need the Frost +1. I don't know where they even have Pyro on here because it definitely seems like it's gotten worse. But Pyro, maybe it is easier just to go to units. But you can see like so many of these options, you need +1s. And honestly, I don't know, this Wukong Jinx obviously doesn't need a +1, but here we can just like look at units themselves. So many of these units, you're really not excited to play without a +1. Nami, is just not a forecast that's playable whatsoever as a main carry. Varus, you really, really want to hit +1s and stuff like that. Taric and Rise are often tied to like Scholar +1. Things like Karma just seem weak right now. And maybe you can play with a Chrono +1. Olaf, you really need that Frost +1 or that Hunter +1. Callista is like maybe one of the only ones that it feels like you can play it without the +1. Even like someone like Gwen, Fiora, like you really need like Witchcraft +1 to really be able to play around stuff like Fiora happily. It's a mess in my opinion. I think TFT's at its best, like I was talking about, when you have all of these different options available to you, where you go into your 4-2 roll down, you have some 80 items slammed, and if you roll down and find a Fiora 2, boom, throw the items onto Fiora. If you roll down and find a Varus 2, boom, throw the items onto Varus. And these units should be strong in themselves. This is something that we talked about actually on the co-stream with Kai, is that it feels like so much in modern TFT, they have taken so much power out of individual units and put them into traits, so that flex play is this is one of the reasons why quote unquote flex play is dead. Is if you roll down and you hit a Gwen 2 and you just have like random items to throw onto her, you can't just throw her on your board with like 2 Warrior or 2 Sugarcraft or something. Compare this to, and I'm trying to remember, it was set 9. Gwen was Shadow Isles. That's the example that Dorowaza gave, and I think there's a brilliant example. And for anyone who didn't exist in set 9, if you found a Gwen 2, you throw that Gwen 2 on your board. Shadow Isles is one of her traits. You put 2 Shadow Isles and the equivalent of basically like 2 Sugarcraft or 2 Warrior with current Gwen. That unit would be a monster. She would do absolute work. But if you put a Gwen on your board with just 2 Sugarcraft in, she's doing nothing. 2 Warrior, she's doing absolute nothing. Even if you put like items onto her, she's just very, very mediocre. And so I do hope that they pull more of the power out of these traits, just because I feel like the power imbalance between traits and units is really, really rough right now. I really want them to pull some of the power out of these traits and put them back into units so that we can feel good about playing flex play. And Mort had he responded. There was a clip on his stream where he responded to somebody talking about this. And somebody said, pro players want to be able to roll down, and if they find a Nasus 2, be able to play it with no traits and have it be strong on their board. And Mort was essentially like, well, when you do that, then the traits like don't really matter at all. And people like that's not good for the game. And I think that's that's a very extreme example. I don't think if you hit a Nasus 2 on roll down, you should be able to play it as a threat on your board. But I think it should make sense to fit a Nasus and a Nico. And if you're playing around Fiora, then, you get Witchcraft in and maybe play around some more like vertical Witchcraft stuff, be able to play around that unit. I think it should just make sense. It should not make sense that you just skip a Nasus 2 on your roll down because it doesn't make sense to play it on your board because the traits don't fit. That's crazy. Okay, I've said a lot about this, so let's get back to the rest of the article. But it's something that I care about a lot, and I think TFT's at its best. It's most skill expressive and it's most fun when you can play flexibly around that stuff. Champion augments. And did they? Were there any reveals on this for next set? I don't think so. Oh my god, wait, I have so much stuff. Okay, we'll breeze through champion augments because I know there's another big thing that I want to talk about as well. Holy, this video is gonna be like half an hour long. Oh god, it's already 25 minutes, maybe even longer. Okay, champion augments. They talked about how champion augments are cool, but they should be niche, right? You should want to take Deja Vu is perfect. You take Deja Vu and you have a Guinsoo and maybe you have some Gallios or something, but you don't want augments to be like really, really generically strong. Zap attack when it was really, really broken. I mean, this is the balancing thing. I think they did okay with this. There are definitely some egregious hero augment patches. They did actually make an announcement. They said, moving forward, we'll be changing our approach to champion augments. We will make 1-cost champion augments silver tier so they aren't as impactful in later stages. We're also going to continue 2-cost and even 3-cost champion augments. We'll have one more extension to this area that will reveal a later time. No clue what that means. Let's say it should team up with the rest of our augment learnings quite well. And I don't remember what they talk about like traits in their augment learnings and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what they have going on. I do think, balance is really important when it comes to these hero augments, just because if you get the balance wrong, they are really, really obnoxious to play against. But that's the only thing is that you need to get the balance right. Okay, who do you have to watch instead of Robin just died? Let's pivot over to replay's POV. Hopefully, okay, he's in game. Okay, he's decently in game. This should take us through the rest of the video. All right, another big thing, man, there's so much stuff in this article. Is chase, not chase traits, but loot augments, essentially. Fortune favors the bold is, the most obvious example of them. Their goal with this was that cash out traits are can be really, really unhealthy for the game. You don't really want to have these like big cash out traits that allow you, like Fortune, like Heartsteel, where you get to play them early, get a bunch of value out of them, and then pivot out of them, and then you've gotten all of this value out of the trait, and all you've lost is your HP, and then you get, the value of just completely pivoting your board and playing something stronger later. It is kind of an issue sometimes when those traits are in the game, because you get the best of both worlds. You get to play them early, and then late game you just get to pivot out of them. So, you get to do whatever you want, it's not ideal for balance. Though, you go in the other direction. We have, Fortune favors the bold. I think Riot would agree was kind of a balance failure. This augment was horrendously broken early on in the set. People would instantly take it and then open fort. And then, now that we're at the end of the set, it's basically unclickable because they didn't want it to be broken for competitive. That is an issue, certainly. And I think one that, Riot Games understands is an issue. So what are they going to do about it? They said, we're proud to have tried this out, and we'll take some of the successes here into the future. As for Into the Arcane, which is, I didn't announce it, but that's the name of the new set. Obviously, it's Arcane themed. We will have high stakes. We'll have a high stakes trait that's sure to create some highly illegal board states. So we're going back to cash out traits, essentially, is what they're saying here. They're saying that for sure we will have a cash out trait next set, or some kind of trait like that. And, that's that is a kind of big announcement. And I think, some people are going to be really, really happy with that. Some people are going to be really, really upset about that because, cash out traits are really, really rough when they're imbalanced. But I do think at their best, cash out traits are really, really memorable and really, really fun. If you guys remember, playing around Heartsteel in set 10, getting that huge Heartsteel cash out, or even the sets when it was a bit imbalanced, or the patches where it was a bit imbalanced, and you were, playing Heartsteel, getting insane amounts of loot for multiple rounds, it was really fun. I do think there is room in TFT for these cash out traits, but obviously they have to be, balanced properly, and it's also just kind of, I don't know. We'll see what they have in mind with the next one. I wonder if there's a cool way they can innovate on it. And I do think stuff like Fortune favors the bold. It is a little bit boring that you just take an augment like that, you full open. And then the upside is that, you're down an augment later. But the downside is that, it doesn't make, you get to just force it from that spot. You don't have to like find any of the units. And, it allows you to full open, which is generally, I think something they want to discourage. I do like though a lot of the augments they talked about, like Golden Quest, Upgraded Adventure, Trait Tracker. These are really really cool augments, and I think they should continue to go in that direction a lot. A Golden Quest and stuff like Trade Tracker are some of the most fun augments in the game. Fortune Favors the Bold is probably like my favorite augment, just because every time I see it, I'm like, ooh, I get to reroll, and then I'm gonna get like a cash out. Like it's so fun. So I hope they continue to go in that direction of playing with augments like that. But it does. I don't know about the Lost Streak ones. The Lost Streak ones are a little bit sus. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what they have for next set. Also, they say highly illegal board states. I'm trying to think of what that would mean. Like if there's like a smuggler trait, aren't like isn't Echo like aren't his people like don't they like smuggle stuff, or they like do like light terrorism, right, or something like that? I don't know. They like, I remember them throwing some like, you know, like Green Goblin bombs at people. Okay. In any case, okay, this is another big one that I wanted to talk about. I wonder if it's the last one because it's almost the last one. It's second to last. Portals. So I talked about in the last one, and they talked about this in their learnings article. They like portals generally, what they do to the game. They really, really like the fact that, you know, portals make it so that you get a different experience every game. But there is, in my opinion, there's a little bit of portal exhaustion, you know, having to pick a portal every single round. They talk about actually it being kind of like difficult for new players to have to read all these portals quickly. I don't really buy that or really understand that logic, because I think most portals are pretty easily understandable. And at the end of the day, it's not like you're gaining an advantage. If you just sit in the middle and you say, okay, I don't want to read any portals, you just sit in the middle, like it doesn't really matter. Everybody gets the same portal, so it's not like you get any kind of benefit. Yeah, I don't really buy that. And the thing I like about portals is they're self-correcting. If there's a really, really broken, really, really annoying portal to play in that people just hate, then nobody's going to stand on it. Or maybe one guy stands on it, and every once in a while you get one guide, but most of the time you don't have to play for it. Their solution to this is that portals are going to exist in the same way that beginning of game encounters existed in set 11, where sometimes, and for people who didn't play set 11, sometimes at the start of the game you will just say, today we are in a Jinx game, and a Jinx game means that we are playing Crabrave or Scuttlepuddle, or maybe they talk about like, today this is an Echo game. Echo means that you're getting triple prismatics, or maybe just that you're starting the game with a prismatic. And I'm a little scared of this. They've said they're taking a lot of efforts to make it so it's only the most popular portals, right? It's only the portals that people really, really, really like. And I do think, you know, maybe my fears about this are overblown. But the self-correcting nature of portals, I think, is really, really important. What if there ends up being a portal that they put in at the start? You know, what if we have I don't know, what's a champion like Silco, but like isn't he, I mean, spoilers, whatever. Is Silco even going to be in Arcane Season 2? But, you know, imagine Silco existed. What if there's like a Silco encounter? And, you know, Silco, you start the game, you see Silco, and this is a really, really extreme example that obviously they won't do. But what if it's the Stillwater Hold one, where you get no augments? Obviously, they're not going to do that, but what if there's something similar to that, where it's something that people, you know, Riot Games does not foresee that a lot of people dislike, and, you know, we have to play multiple patches with just some essentially portals that people don't like, that there's nothing that we can do about. I'm afraid for that. And like I said, maybe my fears are overblown. Maybe I'm just being, you know, a negative Nancy, and, you know, the balance is going to be perfectly fine. Well, it's not even really balanced. It's just making sure that there aren't any that people really, really dislike. But I did like that portals had that self-correcting aspect, where if nobody liked it, nobody would stand on it. These don't have that. But as long as they go really, really soft on them, they don't try any crazy stuff. But I like that the dev team tries crazy stuff sometimes. But if they try crazy stuff with this and people hate it, it's gonna suck. So that's a thought, but that is guaranteed. We will have this next set where you're essentially going to have start of game encounters, which is an interesting idea. I do think, like I said, I do think it's very, very plausible that my fears are overblown, and this is completely fine. And, you know, we get to World Finals, and the final lobby of World Finals is, you know, like an Echo encounter, and it gives me a triple prismatic game, or it's some new encounter that we've never even heard of, and it makes it for like a really interesting game. And, you know, I like that. I like when we have really, really interesting games of TFT. I love the variance that portals add to the game. So I do think this kind of effect needs to stay in the game. And so if they try this out, you know, I do like that they're trying something new at the end of the day. It's just, you know, hopefully it works out. Okay, and then the last thing is reroll versus fast 8. This is kind of just saying they want reroll and fast 8 to be balanced. And I mean, there's not much to say about that. I mean, I agree. I agree. I think both should be balanced. They say some stuff about like hitting units early, which like I don't know. I don't really completely agree with. But at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, balance reroll and fast 8. I'm done. Hire me, Riot Games. I'll be the new Mortdog. Balance reroll, balance fast 8, and you got a great set. Perfect. I have a lot of optimism for next set because, you know, next set is Arcane. This is something that a lot of people, it's going to bring a lot of people into TFT. Theoretically, a lot of people are going to, you know, watch Arcane and be like, oh man, this is so cool. You know, I want to go play a game. And then people are going to say, don't play League of Legends. If you play League of Legends, you're going to want to not be around anymore. And you know, TFT is great. You get to interact with all the same characters, but it's a lot more fun. You don't have people yelling at you. So yeah, I'm sure that'll happen. So I think this set will be very big for TFT, and I think that is why I'm sure that they're putting a lot of resources into this set. And I think, you know, Mortdog has said he's putting his stuff on the table, and he's saying, you know, um, if we have to B patch due to balance on the first patch, I'm gonna give out $500. He made that same claim for set 10, and remember, Mortdog did not pay $500 out because there was no B patch related to balance. I think there was maybe a small one related to like bugs or something. But there was no B patch related to balance in the first patch he was talking about towards the end of the year. Obviously, there are B patches eventually because, you know, it's hard to have 0 B patches across the course of the set. Okay, that's basically the whole article. They talk about Talker Strauss. I don't care about that. We're 35 minutes in. Thank you guys. If you guys stayed this far into the video, write out baloney in the comment section down below so I know who the real ones are. But I greatly appreciate it if you lasted this long. It says something you know, about you that you last that long. That's very you know, it's a good trait to have. So I appreciate that. And let me know what you guys think about all this stuff. Hopefully, you know, you guys have thoughts about this kind of stuff because it matters for the future of TFT. And I know you guys love to yap about what your thoughts are and all that kind of stuff. All right, I gotta go cook a meal. I will see you guys later. Bye.